I'm talking to Kiara Rodrigues, whom I first saw play quite a long time ago. She's still a young woman, but I saw her play when she was a teenager at the Tamworth Country Music Festival, and she's been going to that festival for many years ever since then. She has a new single out called High School Reunion. She has a fantastic country pop sound, and I'm very pleased to be able to talk to her about her already long career in country music. Hi, Kiara.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
It's a pleasure because I think there's a lot to ask you about because, as I said, still a young woman, but you have a long history in country music. Starting at the age of 9, I understand that's when you fell in love with the genre. So I'm wondering what you were listening to that you fell in love with.
Yeah, so I actually didn't know, but I'd grown up listening to a lot of country music. My parents grew up in India, and they listened to all sorts of music up there, but they didn't really classify it into country or anything.
Right.
So I grew up listening to a lot of country music, but didn't necessarily know it was country. Things like Tammy Wynette, Patsy Cline, we just called music in my house.
Right.
And then we moved to North Queensland when I was about 9 years old, and that's where everything for country music is. There's so many great country music artists that have actually come out of places like Mackay and Townsville. And got into the talent quest scene. I went up to a sausage sizzle at Bunnings, and they were advertising this country music talent quest. They were raising funds to put it on. And I thought, I know one song, which is Stand By Your Man.
Yeah.
Turned out I knew a whole heap more, but that was the only country song I thought I knew. And I entered and I won first place, and then sort of went on from there.
So was that when you were 9?
That was when I was 9. So this 9-year-old singing Stand By Your Man, super appropriate. But that's how I got into country music.
And then I was reading that you actually went to the academy when you were 10. So that was obviously only a year after that. And you don't go from nothing to the academy. And obviously you don't just win a talent quest, just deciding one day to get up and do it. So at what age did you start singing or learning an instrument or both?
I only learned an instrument, so I play guitar averagely, but enough to get by. But I learned that once I got into country music. But I was always singing as a kid. When we lived, I was born in Melbourne. Before we were living in Queensland, we were based in Victoria. And I was always singing. I went to the Jan School of Singing for a few years when I was about 7 or so a couple of years there. And I was really starting to get into pop music. And I thought, my first thought when I heard that I was moving to Mackay was, oh my gosh, my singing career is over, which was, it couldn't be further from the truth. And I don't think, I'd still be singing today if I'd sort of not gotten into country. So I'm very grateful that it all worked out.
Well, and also for a 9-year-old, that's heavy. My singing career is over.
I was very serious about it. I was a very serious kid. And I knew I wanted to sing all the time. And you go from, in Melbourne, everyone's very city-like. And so they're like, oh, there's not a whole heap in North Queensland. It's so different moving to the country. And I was so wrong. And I'm so glad I was so wrong, because there was so many more opportunities up there in country music.
So you said there was music always in your household, and as it turned out, it was country music. But do you have any other musical family members?
So my dad sings, and when we got into the talent quest circuit up in North Queensland, he'd jump up and do it. He started getting on stage when he was about 40, so he'd just jump in and sort of get into it. And he still jumps up and sings a duet with me every now and then. My sister's also got a beautiful voice, but she's a little shyer on stage, which I find really funny because I'm the shy one off stage and she's the loud one.
Yeah, right.
But we kind of swap when we get on stage. So my sister's also very musical, and she plays the drums. But my mum was actually the one who taught me to sing, and she is not a great singer herself. She's basically a shower singer, as she says, but she was the one who really had that patience to sit down and teach me the lyrics and write. Back then we had to listen to the CD, write the lyrics. It wasn't as easy as Googling them. So she would actually do that, and she got most of the lyrics right. Some I've grown up singing the wrong words for sure. But she was the one who taught me to sing, and she did her master's in teaching, I think, as well before she came to Australia. So she's definitely got that patience for it as well. So we're all pretty musical in a way.
Yeah, it sounds like you came from a good, fertile environment, and therefore, I mean, look, it's not so much a surprise that you have become a musician, but still, you have to have the talent and commitment to do it. Starting at the age of 10 when you went to the academy. So, what was that like as a 10-year-old to be in that kind of environment?
So surreal. It's just crazy looking back, because at that age, I didn't feel young. I felt really old. I felt like I was all grown up. But basically what happened was I entered all these talent quests. I went to our Queensland Champion of Champions, which was like the state titles back then. And then I went to Tamworth after winning some spots at Tamworth from this Champion of Champions competition. And in Tamworth, that's where I entered these talent quests. And one of the prizes that I won was a scholarship to the academy. And back then it was called Camerata. So it was amazing. And I look back now on that cohort. So my cohort, a lot of them are still, we're all still putting music out today, which is amazing. So it was Melanie Dyer, Hannah Cosgrove, who goes by Hannah May now as well. We've got Katie Brooke, who's releasing some stuff. I could go on and on with Max Jackson, who won Star Maker this year. So it's amazing. There's a big chunk of us that are all still, doing music in some capacity, and that was 16 years ago now. So it's so great to still have those connections.
Well, it also makes one think that the college itself, the academy itself, rather, was a factor in that you are all still making music. That whatever skills you learnt then, and I suppose it is professional development for children at that stage, has stood you in such good stead that you could all continue. Definitely,
I learned so much as a performer as well, and songwriting as well. Learning from Roger Corbett, from the Bushwhackers to learn how to actually write a song in a methodical way and then bring your creative sort of talent to that. It was so valuable, and just getting to meet like-minded people and having a really great environment where that learning and enrichment of music was really fostered. So it was definitely one of my formative experiences as an artist, even though I was 10. There are still things that I learnt in that first academy experience that I take with me. And then I was fortunate enough to attend as a senior graduate in 2019 as well. So, and both times I just got so much out of the experience.
So when you went as a 10-year-old and started to learn songwriting, did you then continue to songwrite, or did you just think, oh, that's a bit too much like school homework, I'll do it later?
Yeah, I loved it. Because I was always, even at that age at school, English was like my favorite subject, and writing poetry and all of that I really enjoyed. So I kind of soaked it all up, and I started writing. And I'd penned a couple of things at home, like as 9-year-olds do, but it really got me writing a whole heap after that. So that kind of propelled my songwriting career, which I'm still really passionate about.
And you've won awards in, I should say. And so there was one competition I saw that you actually got first and second.
Yes. Yeah. So I love writing songs. I'm a speech pathologist by trade. So words are always, something that I love to play with. And I've always got that sort of communication background going on. So I love to sort of twist words and spin them into something, really sassy and fun. So yes, I really enjoy my songwriting as much as I do the singing part as well.
And is there a place in speech pathology for songs? So do you use those as a tool to help teach speech?
Definitely. So the population I work with, they're actually adults who've had things like strokes or different injuries to the brain, and you can lose your communication. So overnight, you can go from being someone who's very, fully fluent in English and then lose all your language. And it's just so surprising. Sometimes singing, which is a different part of your brain or a different route, a different network, can be preserved. So we have patients who can't say a single thing. We sing Happy Birthday, or we sing one of their favorite, John Denver songs or something like that. Yeah. And they're singing away, and their family's in tears, and I'm in tears as well under my mask. And so we actually use those melodic roots to teach or to reteach speech after a stroke too. So there's something just so powerful, I think, about that, so much can be lost. You can lose how you walk, how you talk, but music still remains. And I also work a lot with patients who have dementia, and again, a lot of things can go, but you turn on Elvis Presley and you see their eyes light up, and it's a whole different experience. So yes, music is kind of interwoven in what I do every day.
Yeah. And it is so interesting that singing comes from a different part of the brain than speech, because you'd be inclined to think that they are related. But I have heard that with dementia patients that, they can forget a lot of things, but as soon as you play a song they've known from years before, something switches on.
Definitely. It's just so powerful. Another area, I guess, that speech pathology works with as well is voice disorders. And so when singers lose their voice or, get nodules or different sort of I guess, pathologies as a result of just being a singer. We work with voice therapy as well. So when I chose this degree and chose this pathway, I was looking at what do I enjoy, and this kind of brings together all the things I love.
And it must be great for the patients who are singers to know that you sing. So you really understand, well, you'd understand how hard it is for them, I imagine.
Yeah, and I think it's good because the repertoire as well that I know from country music is a little bit older style. So I'm often the speechy that gets sent in if there's a patient who's got these communication difficulties. And we'll sing some country songs, some old style songs, and it's just a handy thing to have in my toolkit as well. I've had some patients who've crossed over as country music fans, and I've gone, hello, how you doing? And they're like, oh, I know a speech pathologist called Kiara, and it's me. And they've seen me play at a festival or something somewhere else. So it's pretty cool. And I love being able to sing for a living in different aspects.
Yeah, fantastic. And of course, you did start singing, as we talked about, at quite a young age. And I'm wondering, after you went to the academy again, so you were songwriting, were you also playing gigs as a young person?
Yeah, so I was really fortunate. I've been working with West League since I was about 14 or 15 years old. So I always sort of played shows at West Leagues at Tamworth Country Music Festival. That's where people generally know to find me. And it's just a great partnership that we've had over the years. And I think every Tamworth that I've been since then, I've played at West, but also doing gigs at different country music festivals. So when I was around 17 or 18, I started getting booked places like Mildura Country Music Festival, Horsham, Kyabram, and I sort of, even in the first couple of years of uni, it was like going to uni during the week, and then Friday I'd be flying out interstate somewhere to play a show, which was just a crazy time. I was doing tutoring, and I was doing a retail job at the same time. So it was just fingers in pies. But it was so fun. So I've been doing the semi-professional sort of gigging for a long time now as well.
And West was where I saw you when you were younger than you are now. And I can't remember which year it was, but I do remember just being so impressed by your skill and your stage presence, because I remember thinking at that age, there's no way I could have got up and done that. But obviously people can know to find you at West if they're back at Tamworth. And we talked about songwriting, but what I didn't ask you a few minutes ago was your work habits as a songwriter. Do you set aside time? I suppose, given that you have a full-time career, you might have to set aside time to songwrite, or do you tend to get an idea, note it down, try to follow it at that time?
I think it's constantly, I'm just sort of, I go with the flow. So I know that, I'm trying to be a bit more rigorous with it these days, but I tend to just, I'll have this idea and it'll be floating in my head, and I'll be singing it at work, like in my head. And then just whenever I find time, I'll sit down. I'm a bit high tech, so I go laptop, because I feel like I can just, my handwriting's like chicken scratch. So I'm very much like a laptop, piano, guitar kind of girl. And I just, when it comes, and it's the strangest experience, songwriting. I'll sit there, I'll smash the song out, and it usually comes quite quickly when it does. It doesn't always come when you want it to, but I'll smash it out in, like, say 20 minutes, half an hour. And then I just can't remember, like it's like it all just whizzes by in your brain, and suddenly there's this song there. And every time I write a song, it's like that. So even writing this new single, I remember being at my laptop, but how it all came together is such a blur. But it does at the end. So it's a really cool process.
I guess it's because you put all the steps in place, right? So you have all that experience behind you of playing instruments, of singing, of songwriting craft. So maybe it's just that magic happens because you've done all that work beforehand.
Yeah, look, and I don't know that there's too much of a method to the madness. It just it's like anything creative. It's just sort of flows, and when it does, it works. So yeah.
And you mentioned piano, so that's another instrument you play. At what age did you start playing that?
So piano is definitely my second instrument. I just chord bash. But that's actually, like, my parents, that's when they started to notice when I was young that I had some sort of musical talent. So they bought me, those kids' books with the piano down the bottom. And I was sort of starting to play melodies on that, like, as a really young kid. And they thought, wow, this is crazy. So they got me like a little Casio keyboard. And I was sort of working out chords, not knowing what a chord was, but I was going, oh, these three notes kind of sound good together. Oh, and these three notes sound good together, and working all of that out. So it was actually the first instrument I picked up. And I play everything by ear, so I'm hopeless. I wish I could read music so badly, but I cannot. And I've tried, but my ear is pretty strong, and I start to sort of just go by feel. So I play piano. I don't usually bring it out at gigs. It's more just a thing I have at home for writing, but I still enjoy it.
And do you prefer writing on guitar or piano, or, as you said, both come into play?
Yeah, I think, look, I probably do a bit more writing on guitar, but it's not really a preference. I guess it just depends on what type of song I've got coming out as well.
Yeah. And I also read that you have been on the X Factor and Young Talent Time, and I'm wondering if being on TV is more nerve-wracking than playing a gig.
I'd say it's more nerve-wracking because the gig I kind of feel at home. You're playing to a live audience. It's very, especially with Australian country music audiences, we're very down to earth. It's very interactive. You'll see at Tamworth, you've got Amber Lawrence walking down the street, and you've got Becky. It's all very integrated, so you don't feel that. Whereas on TV, it's again a little bit more manufactured. You've got things that you have to kind of say, and it's definitely a different experience. And I probably prefer, I guess, being live in the moment and having that more authentic experience. But it's still super fun to see how a TV show works and just get a different sort of perspective on it as well.
Do you tend to approach things like that as fun, like a good opportunity, rather than thinking, oh, I have to do this for my career?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's just a bit of fun knowing that, it's good exposure at the end of the day. If you can get your name out there to a few more people, that's great. But not taking it too seriously. Like, I guess winning those shows aren't the be all and end all. And we've seen that with a lot of great country music artists who've come through that, and their careers have skyrocketed, but they haven't necessarily won the show as well. So
yeah,
I think just taking that experience for what it is and getting the positives out of it.
So your new song is High School Reunion, and I believe that it was inspired by you thinking, oh, it's been almost 10 years since I left school, and thinking about what people would be doing. You mentioned earlier on being interested in wordplay and the language within songs, and certainly there's a lot in this song that's really interesting and a bit arch sometimes, which I thought was really good fun. It wasn't the whole who's living their dreams. It was, some of it was, who's done what to their face. So I was wondering, so when you set out to write this, it is very contemporary in that way. You are writing about things that people tend to do now rather than they would have done at a high school reunion 10 or 20 years ago. So was this just you observing your age group and thinking this is what's happening?
In a way, I guess I sort of wasn't looking at my high school peers by any means on Instagram and doing all of that. And I think high school reunions are slightly redundant now because we can see what people are doing on Facebook and Instagram for sure. Like, I know what most people are up to these days. But I just took it, after 2 years being out of the game. So I basically graduated uni, started working in a hospital. 1 month later, COVID hit. So my job in speech pathology ramped up a whole heap because we're in the acute setting. But music-wise, I didn't do a lot for 2 years. Most of us didn't do a lot, but for me, I took that kind of personally. And, at the start of the year, I was going, I haven't achieved anything with my music, which was just me being dramatic. But I was going, my high school reunions next year, or it will be, if we do a high school reunion, it'll be 10 years next year. What if I rocked up now and had nothing to show for it? Which is, not the case, but that's just how I was sort of, that was the emotion in me. And that's what inspired the song. And so I sort of took this really serious moment and turned it into something a bit lighthearted, and just, that fact that, like, a lot of us dread our high school reunions, and it's all about who's done what and who's done this. And the song's very much like, take me back to when we were 17. It was all great. But in all honesty, I wouldn't go back to high school if I had the choice. Like, your 20s are way more fun and less, less dramatic and less stressful. But that's how the song came about.
I think the video you did for it actually really does pick up that spirit of the song, because it's quite funny as well. Like, if as I was watching, I was thinking, it looks like Kiara's had a bit of fun here.
Definitely. I was so fortunate to work with Jeremy Minute from the Viper Creek Band. So this is actually his sort of side hustle. It's called Eyes and Ears Creative is the name of his company. And he had the idea. He said, let's get these mannequins and dress them up and make them the high school, classmates. Because we could have done the sort of orthodox thing and just had a generic high school reunion. And I thought, that's a bit unusual. And then I thought about it some more, and I thought actually this will work really well with the song, because like you said, Sophie, it's who's done things to their faces, who stayed still, who went places, and it kind of ties in with the clip really nicely, because you've got these dolled up mannequins going nowhere, and they have done things to their faces. So it really worked really well, and sort of just kept that lighthearted look at the song too. So I was so stoked with how the video clip came out, and it was super fun to make.
Yeah, and it's great fun to watch. Now, the song was produced by Liam Kennedy Clark, who's also a recording artist. How did you come to work with him?
I've known Liam for many years now, just through the circuit and everything. But yeah, I just hit him up, and I just really, I guess, had listened to a few of the songs that he'd produced, and I went, this is sort of the feel that I really want for this particular song for High School Reunion. I want something that's got, those traditional, it's got that grand ole opry kind of feel, but then meets something a bit more contemporary. And I draw a lot of inspiration from writers like Casey Musgraves. So it was kind of that crossover that would still sort of appeal to your more traditional audiences, but also have that contemporary feel too. And I think Liam just hit that, the brief I said was kind of crossover, kind of sounds like Casey Musgraves, and he just went, yep, got it. And he was so great to work with as a producer, because we've done gigs and stuff together over the years, but a producer's job is so different to all of that. And I always thought he was a great musician, but producing, I think he's really in his element there. So it was super fun, and we did a lot of it over distance. So because he's on the Central Coast, I'm in Sydney. I sort of did guide vocals here, and then I only really came up to do the final vocals. So it was a very quick and easy process, and yeah, I'm really proud of what we made.
Now, you have a busy life. You have a full-time career. You're playing gigs on weekends. I've seen on your social media, and you've just released this song. So, in thinking about the future, are you planning or hoping to release some songs regularly now that you can play shows again and connect with audiences?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm looking to record some more music, and looking to get out there, I guess, and playing more gigs.
Well, in the meantime, people can very much enjoy High School Reunion. I think you don't have to be at your 10-year mark to appreciate it. I think you could be at any year mark. Kiara, it was so great to find out more about you and your career, and hope to talk to you again sometime.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.